Hey everybody, we're here. I am Chancy Smith,
I'm Stephanie Weber.
and we are staying off screen because it's a weekend and we don't go on camera on the weekends. We're going to work through today managing the flow of conversation, turn taking, and back channeling.
All right, which is exactly as it sounds. Our first main topic is turn taking. The simplest way to put that is that it's just a conversation between your speakers and your listeners. So in a perfect conversation, on the right side of the screen, the speaker speaks, they stop, then the next speaker goes, and back and forth. So your pattern would be like an A B turn taking. Um, but then there's very specific forms of turn taking as well.
Well,
One,
we were talking about like in the classroom that there is no turn taking really in a high school classroom. People just like end up talking over each other. So we were
especially
kind
with
of
freshmen.
intrigued. Well, especially us, apparently. So yeah. All right. Is this me? This is me.
This is you.
Okay, so transition relevance is what we should have just done. And it is it is defined as structural moments where speaker transitions become possible. Here, current speakers may continue speaking and allocate turns to specific participants or allow self-selection. In the classroom, we see much more like self-selection, but we referred to the dinner plans because it was very intentional, we thought that was in there. And we have where Julia asks, like, where do you guys want to eat? Neil's like, I don't know. Nick was like, McDonald's. Um, oh, and then we ended up like looking at the transitions being like the 3 seconds. So those are the pauses. So that was a little bit of it was an intended self-selection, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And then the pauses were they automatically responded to. And it's like the awkward pauses with teenagers. It happens in our families as well. And we noted that just with our seconds that we were looking through. So turn allocation. Um, this is just we had to talk through this one because
Yeah.
we started getting like, okay, but isn't this part of that? And so really kind of paying a little bit better attention to what the text was saying in our textbook, our online textbook. But the turn allocations happen in conversations where either it's the current speaker selects next, and that's where again we don't that doesn't really happen a lot with us in class unless we're doing like a Socratic seminar or
I was just
something.
gonna say a Socratic seminar where it's like predetermined before the speaking even starts of who's talking. You know what I mean? Especially if it's
Yeah.
like an inside outside circle type deal, like those roles are kind of played out
Yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah, and then if there isn't like predetermined one, then it just like self-selection where the kids it's that awkward pause that we have where the kids will just finally jump in. That's our wait time that we just like wait and then kids will jump in and actually speak their turn because they get tired of waiting for us to jump in and save them.
Hmm.
All right, current speaker selects next. This is the one that I was talking about that was very clear and intended because we specifically see that Julia addresses Neil and also the dog at later time, which I thought was funny. So when Julia is saying like, "What are you hungry for, Neil?" Then that's the current speaker selects next. And so I thought that was done really well. It was a great example. And then I put Benny in there because poor Benny needs a voice in what is happening in dinner as well. And then self-selection, Steph, is this you? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. So self-selection is there's different parts here that we take a look at. Like again, I think if we go back to um like a Socratic seminar example where roles have kind of been given before we're starting to speak. So the first starter would be the participant obviously starts speaking. And then if there's a slight gap or slight overlap with that next speaker, they're going to go next. Then you can get into self-selection where it turns into like an interruption.
Hmm.
And this is my entire conversation with my family. I probably should have had a different group to speak for my transcript project because my family just competes for talking time. That's pretty typical of us. So if you look at the interruption part, This is the beginning of our conversation where we were trying to plan a vacation that will probably never happen. Um, my mom starts with Beth, that's Beth. So yeah, so, and then my sister Samantha, and then my mom is still trying to talk with, well, what I was thinking. And then Samantha finally says no. And then she jumps into like her plans of what she wants to go see in Europe. So that's chaos. But that is your interruption self-selection. And then for second starters, participants who start after the first starter has already begun, um, it is more to me like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a cohesive
Yeah,
interruption. You know what I mean? Like,
there's
how am
more
I
of a
saying this?
rhythm.
A rhythm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a rhythm to it, and it goes that way instead of being like an interruption of back and forth, and you're not getting anywhere.
Well, and I think I mean, I see that a little bit when in one of my conversations that I had recorded with my teenager and a couple of her friends that they actually misheard, like Reagan, my daughter's best friend, misheard something that Reagan's cousin said. And
Hmm.
so they jump in to kind of clarify the misunderstanding because that was a really important part of the story that they were focusing on.
Got it.
All right,
Okay.
adjacency pairs, that's you too.
I think so. I think I'm the rest. So for adjacency pairs, we're looking at speakers taking turns going back and forth, but we're kind of categorizing those in a different way. So you could have like a Q&A, question and answer with kind of a natural flow of conversation. When you're asked a question, you know you're supposed to answer. Um, then we could go into like a greeting and then a greeting back before you kind of get into the meat of a conversation. Um, an invite or acceptance, you're going to give your response to that invitation, whether you're refusing or accepting. And then a summons answer. This is what we took from the dinner plans transcript at the very beginning. Julia says, Neil, come here, summoning into the conversation. Neil says, why? And then we give a response of why this conversation is happening with, well, because we need to talk about dinner.
Well, and I
And
think if
then
we,
go
sorry, I
ahead.
think if
No,
we
go
talk
ahead.
about like the pairs, I mean, we could widen it to like the classroom, right? Because that's kind of our role is
Hmm.
like um, we summon like we're standing on the hilltop answers from our students. So
Right.
the same question, answer, greeting, like those are the same things that we do every day in our classroom as
Hmm.
well.
Okay, so the next category that we're getting into after turn taking is back channeling. And back channeling is one of two categories. We either have verbal cues of back channeling or non-verbal feedback type cues. And this basically shows that the listener is being attentive to the speaker. And the key here is that they're non-intrusive cues. It's not something that disrupts a conversation and disrupts the flow of conversation. Um, so for verbal cues, anything that's like a short word or a phrase, yeah, right, mm-hmm. Oh, wow, sure, okay. And again, doesn't interrupt the conversation, but it shows that whoever is listening to you is paying attention. So this comes from my vacation planning transcript again. Um, my mom starts by saying that she wants to go to Germany for and then Poland for, the World War II history aspects of it. And my sister says, right. And the conversation keeps going. It wasn't interrupted, but Samantha is showing that she's paying attention and listening. And in this case specifically, in agreement with what my mom is saying as she continues her part of the conversation. And then,
That's my part, the nonverbal. Huh. So, Stephanie, you want to talk about like the definitions and like what it is, and then I'll talk about my girls' conversation.
yeah, excuse me, I'm dying over
Don't
here.
die. Don't die.
Um, So the other part of back channeling is nonverbal. So we have gestures in this case, like leaning in towards a speaker or smiling, nodding, laughing, shaking heads, facial expressions. I tell my kids like towards the beginning of the year that this is how I can tell who's going to be my favorite and who's not by the ones that like make eye contact and like are nodding, while I'm talking to them and showing that they're understanding and then just listening to what I have to say.
Yeah, I do the same thing, but like I warn them on my facial expressions. I'm like, my face will always be screaming, like whether you're like on the right path or not. It was one of the things where, I start to think about this and I think like when we were in COVID, like this was probably not a great way to communicate, right? Because a lot of stuff, like even if we were leaning in forward with COVID, it might have been because we couldn't hear you, right? Not
Right.
that we
Yeah.
were necessarily, and then smiling, like we're not going to see, the laughing could have been muffled. And I was very thankful for the facial expressions being hidden. But I talked about this with with the conversation with my girls, or with my daughter and her best friend and cousin, that I mean with teenagers, especially with teenage girls, and her cousin is 22, but like it was constant laughing and giggling over each other and then like shaking their heads and like shoving each other's shoulders, which that's a little physical, not nonverbal. But they tend to all kind of start leaning their heads in together when they get really intense in their stories.
Hmm.
But the nodding and laughing seems to like overlap each other like over and over again. So I was gonna try, we were gonna try to put it in there, but like there's so much of it that you can't even discern where the conversation is, and where it stops. So, but I thought that that was, it was really hard to, I think, to do the nonverbal when you are not physically there listening and watching the conversation, right? Like, so my daughter did this like in the car with them. And I wasn't in there because, teenagers tend to not talk when mom's in the car. Um,
Hmm.
or sometimes they pretend they don't recognize that I am in the car and talk about things that I'm like, oh, really? So that was a little more difficult for me, like seeing the physical nonverbal stuff, but the laughing and really the leaning in and the I could hear them like audibly shaking their heads because they were like no, and I felt that like I knew in their like they were also like shaking their heads and screaming no,
Yeah.
and laughing all at the same time. So um that was quick, fast, and in a hurry, but I feel like where we spent a lot of time was looking through, really like there were two main branches that we were looking at, right?
Hmm.
And if we want to look at our works cited page, we had specific works cited or sources that went with each one, but what we found in each source with there was kind of like a crossover between a lot of what we found in one source would work with a couple of pieces. So what we ended up doing was grouping all of ours, like our top five that we used. So there are some pieces in a slide that are from our textbook, and then we did get an article given to us that was, which one is that? Is
I
it
think
the,
it's the simplistic
yes.
schematics is the one you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that one, and then we also found one, the one right below it is from two people that were in that article as well, or at least one person that was in that article. And then they wrote another one, no, Saxon Schletthoff. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there were two that wrote that last article that I found another article that was written kind of around the same time period, but focused specifically on like the pausing and stuff that we had ability to get in and look at a little bit clearer definitions of back channeling and the speaker select. So that's how we ended up doing our works cited, is that we kind of found a lot of crossover in some of the sources that we found online.
Yeah. And I think to go back to your point about the two main channels of back channeling, verbal and nonverbal, like how essential the nonverbal cues are. Like, we talk about emailing parents or something or versus a phone call that, how can your words be misinterpreted? Like even if you have the audio of a conversation, you don't see, like even right now, like you and I talking because we're looking busted and not sharing on screen,
Yeah.
like those verbal cues are so essential to look at your tone and to look at like the intention behind a conversation. And um
Well, I
I
think that
think
goes into text messaging too, right? Like
totally
a lot
any written
on,
text, yeah.
yeah. And
Emails, yeah.
when we started doing some research on it, like a lot of the more recent research addressed specifically like social media
Hmm.
and text messaging and uh, emails, which, it in the any kind of formality of your business or your school or your district or your administration, right? Like
Hmm.
we that nonverbal cue that we're looking at, like we end up missing a lot with the technology. So
Yeah, and I think that's been a great thing, at least in Oklahoma. I can't speak to other states, but well, Texas too, with
yeah,
the cell phone ban, like
yeah,
how much great conversation has come back into the classroom with that, even in the hallway, even I'm not even talking academically, just having kids like know what a real conversation is again and not be buried in
yeah,
their
I agree.
phones without the nonverbal cues of back channeling.
Yeah, yeah. Look at that. Great wrap up. Good
Look at
job.
that. All right. Okay, this has been our presentation.
Hope y'all enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you.